travel was a dream that just felt like a dream. I mean, there was no real sense of reality to it. So I had, my whole boring life totally planned out. And then life happened and kind of took a left turn. And so living in Budapest is like this giant, big, magical spell, I think. You've got like the brilliance of like jaw-dropping brilliance of the opera house on one corner, but then you like turn down the next street and it's totally chaotic with like the ruined bars. The realistic view is that it's very challenging. The other side of that though is starting it away from where I normally have been in the past. I could totally reinvent myself if I wanted to.
Hey guys, Triston here for the Backpacker Society. Welcome to the show. As always, whether you're new to the show or you listened before, thanks for coming by and hanging out, and I hope you'll be inspired by travel today. If you happen to be newer to travel and have been thinking more about international travel, or you've ever wondered what it might be like in Budapest, then stick around because my guest today shares how international travel entered her life at a later stage, and overall it being new in general, maybe in the last year having done her travels, as well as her move to Budapest and building a life there. My guest today is Amy Buzz, and in the interview, of course, she shares what led her to her move to Budapest and what it's been like to adapt the culture and live there day to day as a local. We dive a little bit into the process to actually become an expat over there, and then also we talk a bit about her process to build a business while being out there, some of the challenges and lessons learned through that experience. On the back end of the interview, I'll share a few thoughts for any new travelers or international travelers in general. But for now, let's roll into our interview with Amy. You're coming from, obviously you're in Budapest right now,
I
correct?
am. I am. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Hopefully it's been great there so far. It's been a while since I've been there personally, but I know it's a great time for sure.
It is. It's been a challenge. It's also been really fabulous. So,
Maybe a little bit cold over there as well, I'm sure.
yes. So, interesting thing, right? They haven't had snow and cold like this in like 15 years. I said, "Well, every time
Oh.
I show up, this is what happens." So, yeah, it's unseasonable, but I love it because I like the cold and the snow, but yeah, it's getting old for people who've lived here for a long time. They're like, "Okay, I'm over it." So,
Well, I will let you have the cold. I'm over here in Texas, San Antonio.
yeah,
So right now, I mean, we had a little bit of a cold front. I guess last week it dropped down here to like
right.
in degrees, I guess Celsius, maybe like I don't know, maybe 5 Celsius. So
Oh, don't
definitely
worry,
unusual for here.
I'm still from the US, Fahrenheit makes more sense.
Ah, that's true. That's true. Yes. So maybe like maybe like 20 at its
Right,
coldest, 25. So
right, right.
um but now I think today it's right now about like 70. So a
I'll
little bit
take it,
different for
yeah.
sure.
I actually
Well,
prefer the
awesome.
cold, but I
Yeah.
can always put more clothes on. You can only take off so much and still be decent in public, so
That's true too. Very true. Awesome. So I'm curious. Obviously, I think yeah, this is your first podcast.
yes.
Where's your kind of head where's your head at for this interview?
Um, Mixed bag. So, super excited. I'm talking about things I love to talk about, and I love to talk, so all of that is good. In my former life, I did some radio, so not foreign concept to me. I'm just usually on the other side of the interview. So this side is new.
Yeah.
That side is not so much. So I'm excited and I'm nervous as all get out. So
Awesome. But again, I'm happy to have you on, especially, obviously talking about travel and for you being someone that's new to travel, getting that perspective as well. So, but since before I even get into the question, since you brought up radio, I'm just curious now, like, what were you doing with that specifically?
I did a little bit of everything. I worked in public radio. I also worked in commercial radio for a while. Wrote commercials, did commercials, and had my own show for a while and my own time slot, and did a lot in the beginning, did a lot of filling in for other people during their time slot so that they could have vacation. That's kind of how I got my feet under me, and then eventually had a small show of my own. It was a small station in North Carolina, and so um, but I had sort of two stints at it when I first graduated from college, and then again when my kids started school. It was good, but the business has changed a lot since then. That was 20 years ago and 40 years ago, respectively. So
Mm,
it's quite different now.
gotcha. And I was gonna say, actually, like typically, I would kind of break down how we kind of go about the interview, which I will. We kind of start off with getting to know you as a person. We're
Mhm.
kind of just started it right now.
Yep.
But then going into after that, getting insight obviously on a place which today obviously will be about Budapest, and then from there taking
Mhm.
it to getting to know you more as a traveler,
Okay.
and then from there getting into the main topic. But I kind of want to follow up on the radio thing for sure. Like, when did you first get into get interested in, I guess, broadcasting, and kind of how did you get into that direction for being on radio?
I kind of got into radio when I was a teenager, actually. I was a junior, I think maybe in high school in the US, and um kind of just got exposed to the industry and decided that's what I was going to do. Went to college for that. Graduated and got a job in radio. Actually in the hometown I grew up in, the first radio station I was exposed to. He was willing to take a chance on a diamond in the rough and see what he could develop. And I worked there for a little while until I got married and moved out of that town and started, started a family, and radio and small children wasn't a real great fit back then. And so left the business, went, got my kids into school. I was a stay home mom for a long time, went back to work part time. And actually, that's sort of where I spent most of my life, was in that mothering. My kids were in school, super involved, all that kind of thing. And I had my whole boring life planned out. I took an administrative assistant job, and I continued to move up the ranks. I thought I was, saving for retirement. Travel was a dream that just felt like a dream. I mean, there was no real sense of reality to it. So I had, my whole boring life totally planned out. Um, and then life happened and kind of took a left turn, and I ended up getting divorced, and I met someone else down the road further. And his map of life looked a whole lot different than mine. And so, just under a year ago, actually, I haven't even been here a whole year yet. I moved to Budapest. We got married. He is a Hungarian American dual citizen. He was born in the US to Hungarian parents, spent his summers in Hungary. So he's bilingual and he's a dual citizen. And we decided that this is where we needed to be. His mother is 90 now, and she wanted him to bring her back here. And when we did, I realized that this is where we needed to be. And so we started the process of getting us both moved here and married and all of the things. And it sounds like it should be easy. It was not. On any
Yeah,
level
sure, sure.
easy. But I am here now, and I am
Yeah,
learning these new roles, this new language, this new culture, really this whole new life. But it's so
yeah,
exciting because I feel like that voice that I lost for so long, that radio voice, that Amy voice, that, who am I voice, whatever, I lost it for so long. And now I'm like finding it again. I'm laughing out loud. I'm going to beer festivals and taking winery tours and soaking in thermal baths and becoming a local, but also still sort of like playing the tourist. And It's just a really exciting time, and oh, also starting a business. So, and a whole new career path, right? Like, so I've done
Yeah.
radio, I've done admin, and now I'm learning how to be an entrepreneur. Storytellers are my absolute favorite people in the whole world, and I tend to be a bit of a storyteller myself, and I feel like words are like actual like magic, right? Like you flick the wand just right and like the audience gasps at how brilliant you are. Of course, if you flick it the wrong way, they gasp for an entirely different reason because you've like cursed yourself to eat slugs or something. Um, but like I love it. And I just like I'm the one who's agonizing over 2 hours over a word in one of my social media posts because like am I pleased or am I overjoyed? And like I'm just terrified of showing up in people's feed sounding like some like accidental pageant queen or something like so I'm really trying to learn how to just be me and let that be enough. Knowing that like the right people will be drawn to me and I'll have the right experiences and right as if there is. but um but yeah, so it's been just like this amazing journey and full of twists and turns and ups and downs, but like learning to just enjoy the ride and the scenery, whatever, has been
Yeah.
really exciting over the last especially over the last year. Lot of changes.
Mhm. 1,000%, and we'll definitely get into more into a lot of those things. I'll
Yeah.
say, of course, as well. Congratulations! You mentioned you are a newlywed. Just about
Yeah,
a was it about a year ago? I know you moved
not
out there about
quite.
a year ago.
It'll be a year in April.
Awesome! Just around the corner, a few months.
Yeah.
We're recording as of February 6th, so just right around the corner.
Yes.
Congratulations
Yep.
again.
Thank you.
Let me ask the next question. Obviously, getting to know you more as a person. So obviously did some research. I saw you had a post of your tattoo, the anchor on your arm,
Mhm.
where you joked as well. Every bad cop needs an anchor. I don't know if you remember saying this, but there's a post you said on that particularly. I'm wondering, what does that anchor represent for you? And is there any like crazy story or anything that kind of led up to you getting the tattoo in the first place?
I actually don't have an anchor tattoo. I do have
Oh,
tattoos, but I don't have one that's an anchor. I'm thinking what you may be referencing is, quite some time ago, I hosted a surprise birthday party for someone, and it was a murder mystery type, um, party, and the character that I was dressed as, we actually drew a picture of a tattoo anchor on my arm so that I would look tougher. Um, so I'm guessing it might be that because it's the only thing I can think of where I've had an anchor, but I actually do have 2 tattoos. I actually nope, take that back, I have 3, but I have one on my forearm, that says Ohana, which means family, and my kids grew up on Lilo and Stitch and the original, and I knew, I had wanted a tattoo from the time I was 18, and I just never got one because I couldn't figure out what in the world I would still want on my body when I was 80. Like, what's
mm,
still gonna be
yeah.
important? Because I wanted it to be meaningful. But when my firstborn was turning 18, they wanted to go get a tattoo together, and we had picked out a matching tattoo, and they had a change of heart at the last minute on what they wanted. So I also had to pick something sort of at the last moment, and Ohana was a really important word for me at that point in time. So that's what I got tattooed on my right forearm. I also have a tattoo of a butterfly on the other side on my left, upper arm, which I got with that same child. And not to be left out, this past winter, about a year ago, my younger one also wanted matching tattoos. So I have a cute little calf on my calf. 'Cause that's the kind of humor we share,
Yeah.
so I do have tattoos. The anchor one, I think, was maybe sort of the kickstart to me thinking, "Hey, I can actually do
Ah,
this. I can actually, like,
yeah.
step into myself a little more." So, yeah, fun times. I'm ready for
Super
more.
cool. It's funny because I did notice there was another picture and you can see a little bit of a tattoo. It's a little bit zoomed out.
But I was looking at it and I was like, this doesn't look like the Anchor one, but maybe I don't know, maybe it's a bit higher. But now that
Yeah.
makes sense. So
Yep.
so you say though you have a matching one for each of your children.
Yes. And as soon as we can
Awesome.
find a good parlor, I will also have a matching one with my husband. So,
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so next question then. You kind of mentioned already your a bit of your background, but
mm,
you're also a professional proofreader and editor, right?
yes,
So
correct.
at the heart of what you do, of course, is helping others find and refine their voice, right? So
Right.
I'm curious, has helping others express themselves always something that's been important to you, and maybe a part of you, and or is that something that you kind of grew into?
I think that passion recycles itself if you give it a chance to. So, when I was in school, high school, university, English was always my favorite subject, and I would always have people, bring me their work and say, "Can you help me make this sound better?" So I did, 'cause whatever. And I tried to find people who understood math, because me and math are not friends. So they would help me with math, I would help them with English, that kind of thing. And then I sorta got away from that. I just didn't that wasn't what I was passionate about when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a career for the rest of my life. But throughout all of my work, whether it was copywriting and radio or whether it was all of the writing and editing I did in administrative roles that I had, so anything from, public facing material, website copy and publications and that kind of thing to, internal communication, reports, all kinds of stuff. I've always done some form of writing and largely editing, even when I wasn't in the department that did editing. People knew my skill set enough that they would bring me things to look at. Can you give this a quick look over before I send it anywhere? Of course, because I love it. I love words. I love the craft. I use too many words frequently, but it's okay. So editing other people also helps me edit me, but I just have always kind of done that. It's always been a part of what I do and who I am. And in my younger days, very much the grammar Nazi, big red pen energy, right? But as I sort of have matured into this new version, better version, current version of myself, it's much less about fixing errors and much more about finding the voice, finding the message, making it clear, tuning out the noise and the chaos of extraneous stuff, and really getting at the heart of what the author wants to say. And sometimes that's messaging, right? Sometimes that is copywriting. It's writing for somebody's product or writing for somebody's website. Sometimes it's helping an author cut 4 chapters out of a book that's way too long, or, pick up the pace so a reader will wanna keep turning the pages. Um, Sometimes it's somebody who's job seeking, right? And they just need a refresher on their resume. I mean, it's a tough job market in the US right now. And obviously, English is my primary language, and I'm from the US. My business is US based, even though I'm not.
Mhm.
And so it's, everybody, everybody is updating their resume. And so it's become a matter of with starting this new business. I needed something that was location independent so that I could live here with my husband. And I needed something that I was passionate about that I felt like was really going to make a difference for people, not just a paycheck. Because I've worked for just a paycheck and I hate it. so,
Yeah, yeah.
so even though I never thought I wanted to be my own boss, here I am being my own boss. And now it's just a matter of connecting with the right people. When
And
you are looking for an editor, some of it is about their skill, like, are they good at what they do? But most of it is about the person on the other side of the edit, right? So, like, are we connected in a good way personality-wise? Like, do we click? Do I really get your voice? Because your voice is the most important part of whatever you're writing. And so if I don't get that, I'm not the right fit. You need a different editor, right? But also, there are so many people who are right on the brink and they just need that one extra word of encouragement to hit publish. And that's me, right? Like, I am such a huge cheerleader. So I've gone
Uh-huh.
from, like, grammar police to, like, "Yay, let's get this done." And it's so funny because I think you attract the kind of person that you are sometimes. And so I've been working
Mhm.
a lot on making connections, personally making connections with people and finding the right fit and encouraging them to take a step out of their comfort zone and edit and hit publish. And so as I've been, trying to increase visibility a little bit, right? I have people in my corner who are also saying, "Step out of your comfort zone a little bit and hit publish." And hit publish for me means social media posts, sure, but it also means, like, I've never done a podcast before, but here we are. So, like, it's a good way for me to experience some of the feelings that they're experiencing, right? And sort of the same thing with travel. I'm new to the whole expat thing. I'm new to travel, but that means I still understand all of the feelings that go into that. And so it's really exciting. I have a lot going on right now.
Sure.
And that's the way I like it. So it's a
Yeah.
really exciting time. And to be able to help other people helps me too. So
Mhm.
a little bit
It's a
self-serving, but mostly I like helping other people.
No, that's a good way to be though. It's funny because it's almost, I think maybe a lot of people they think of a proofreader, proof edit or editor, excuse me, both, and maybe it's just kind of cut and dry to go. All right, I'll look at the text, whatever it is, go through it, and cool. But it's almost like you're a form of therapist in a way where you actually want to again help them find their voice and give them
Yeah,
suggestions, not just read the paper like, all right,
right.
eh, XYZ, fix this and carry on. So
Yeah.
I like that approach for sure. Awesome. Um, but also in relation to your work, follow up question with that or separate question. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but you described yourself as a recovering perfectionist. And you said you said
Mhm.
basically you're still learning. That without mistakes, there's no growth.
Right.
So I'm curious, maybe on both sides, but make more so work aside, or however you'd like to take it. Um, does perfectionism show up in other areas of your life as well? And, how has your relationship with that changed over time?
Absolutely. I say I'm a recovering perfectionist, and some days recovery is harder than others. Um, it's interesting because if you are a recovering alcoholic, you avoid alcohol, right? If you're a recovering drug addict, you avoid drugs. When you're a recovering perfectionist, there's no real way to avoid that. It's sort of part of who you are. So it involves rewiring, just like from the jump. You have to just rewire everything. And I think for me, um, in the past, that has prevented me from trying a lot of things. If I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it. And if I can't do it perfectly on the first try, I'm not sure I want to work at it. Like, I really have to decide that, right? So, past life, that. Present life, really trying to lean into imperfect action. Because that's where the learning happens. That's where the growth happens. That's where you get better. It's also where you get credit. You get credit for showing up when you try, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, like, the most obvious example is this language is so tough. I mean, it's really difficult. It's not impossible, but it is a definite challenge. And in what is pretty common actually, I can understand a lot more than I can speak. I can read a lot more than I can speak. Like, production is the hard part. But part of the reason for it is because I'm so worried about getting it wrong that I'm afraid to try sometimes. And I had an experience a couple of weeks ago. I went into a local coffee shop and I have the skill to order in Hungarian at the coffee shop, I thought. So I said, "I'm gonna practice." And I walked up and there was this youngish man behind the counter. He was probably in his early 20s, if I had to guess. And, I tried to order in Hungarian, and he looked at me and he said, "English is fine, ma'am."
Uh,
I said, "Oh, well, I tried." And he said, "Yes, you did." And then I proceeded to order in English and paid and had my coffee and enjoyed the scenery, but, and he was really sweet about it, and I just have to try, and so that's one of the ways that, like, banishing the perfectionism monster happens is you just do it and you do it imperfectly, and you embarrass yourself if you have to, and then you keep moving. So, it's definitely a work in progress. It's also professionally, it's interesting because what people expect out of an editor and a proofreader is perfection, and it's actually not something I promise because nothing is error free. Even if I'm the best editor on the planet, I'm gonna miss things. Editors hire editors because they know better than to edit their own stuff, right? And so, I what I do promise is the best work that I'm capable of, but I absolutely don't promise perfection because it's not possible, and that's something I've had to learn the hard way. So,
mm.
work in progress.
Well, yeah, as they say, no one's perfect. So I like that you're upfront with that though as well when it
Yeah.
comes to your professional work. Your story kind of reminded me really quickly. You talked about just trying it and not being afraid to make a fool of yourself. There was a time where I spent a lot of time, or at least often went to Germany, and at some point wanted to actually learn the language. The little Duolingo here and there, whatever.
Mhm.
And some phrases I got to learn over time, but I was there with some friends that I met in past travels, but in Germany. And we were at this bar or whatever, and I went to order a beer. Um, so I think I told them, like, oh, I said what the German phrase is to my German friends, and they were like, yeah, yeah. Them knowing that I wasn't saying it correctly, which is fine. But basically, I would say, I'm beer bitter, please, which basically means I am a beer, please. So
Mhm.
So I said this a few times to the people behind the bar, and I think that I remember them giving a little bit of a weird look, but then they passed the beer along, so at least it worked. But then I caught on. My friends, kept laughing after a bit, and it's like, hey, what's so funny? It's like, you just said I am a beer, please. Like, well, it still works. So
Well,
yeah, it
you
definitely
are
can be
what you
afraid to.
drink, so you actually are a
Yeah,
beer. It's fine.
very true too. Very true. So next question.
Mhm.
Of course, we mentioned you're newlywed. Again,
Yes.
congrats.
Thank you.
What has this season of life for you so far, taught you about yourself?
Wow. I think he is my biggest fan, and it is nice to have that kind of support. This transition has not been that difficult for him in because he grew up here. This is his culture, this is his language, um, and not a first marriage for either one of us, frankly. So you learn a lot from your mistakes. Um, but this has been such a huge period of growth for me,
Yeah,
um, because I'm learning to be the wife that he needs, right? Not the wife that somebody else needs, but the wife that he needs and wants. But I'm also learning how to fit into an adopted culture, right? I have a new family here, really. But I'm also learning how to be long distance with my own family, right? My children, my mom, my siblings, whatever, they're all still in the US. And so that is a huge transition for me as well. And obviously, a new business and whatever. So it's really nice to have somebody that is, even though he doesn't totally get it because the experience isn't the same for him, um, even though he doesn't totally get it, he's totally on board. and so supportive of the things that I'm trying to do. And, you know, um, saying all the right things, really.
Yeah.
Um, but but but, like, doing the things that are supportive, right? It was so sweet. I decided I needed to start taking a language class, and I have anxiety, and I deal with anxiety a lot in a lot of different ways, and I was really nervous about this class. And so this sweet man walked me to my first day of class just so that I wouldn't be so nervous about going inside. And it's just it's little things like that, right? It's look, I know you've been working really hard this week. Let's go do something fun. And just to have that partner next to me who is truly like a supportive partner, and we laugh a lot and we have a lot of fun, and we work hard when it's time to work hard, but like he helps me um he helps me banish the taskmaster that is being my own boss. I will sit at the computer and work for way too long, and then he'll come by and say, "Hey, I think it might be quitting time. Let's go have a beer," you know? And so, and, you know, introducing me to people, and he is my built-in translator, which is fabulous. Uh, so we really do I mean, we really are working at like, we live like locals, we live like Hungarians, we don't live like tourists,
Mhm.
which has been a big thing. But
Yeah.
he makes that possible on a higher level and faster than I would ever have managed to do that on my own, just because he has the language and
Mhm.
he has the culture. So
Yeah.
really sort of just like bringing me into that has been amazing.
Got you. And we'll definitely talk a bit more and dive more into
Mhm.
a lot of those things. But yeah, as you said, it's definitely beautiful to have that support, and it sounds like it keeps you balanced for sure. So
For sure. We are exact opposites, and that's what makes it work.
all right. So then for this section, last question.
Mhm.
Finally, in 5 words or less, describe your personality.
5 words or less. Verbose. Let's start with that one. No, I think, that's a tough one. I would say, optimistic, encouraging, perfectionist, um, connection, and a little bit goofy.
Awesome. I like it. I like it. Okay, so for as far as getting to know you as a person, is there
Mhm.
anything else you'd like to add, or are you ready to move
Oh, no, I've said plenty.
on? All right, so then let's transition. We'll speak more on local insight for Budapest, which is where you
Sure.
are.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
just to give a little context, or as you already mentioned it earlier, obviously you've been living out there for is it 9 months specifically now,
Uh-huh.
or
Yep.
yeah, so been out here for 9 months. Obviously, you moved
Mhm.
with got married, moved out there, husband
Uh,
being from there. Again, we'll talk a bit more about the specifics and the connection later.
mhm.
But for now, if you can share, specifics on things to see and do there in Budapest, wherever
Of
you'd like to take
course. Of course. So living in Budapest is like this giant, big, magical spell, I think. I You've got like the brilliance of like jaw-dropping brilliance of the opera house on one corner, but then you like turn down the next street and it's totally chaotic with like the ruined bars. And then you turn again and you're face to face with like this gray communist apartment building block. And so like no matter where you look, there's something to see. And I have said many times, I feel like there is just century upon century upon century of buildings telling secrets to each other, right? So there's just so much history. There's so much beauty here, but there's also some stuff that you look at and go, oh. that's a leftover from an age we don't really wanna go back to. But they all live, like, side by side in this amazing harmony. And it's incredible. I mean, there's always something to look at. The first time I visited, I had no idea what I was getting into. Look, I'm gonna be straight up with you. When I met my husband, he told me one of the first things he told me about himself was, "I'm Hungarian." I said, "Okay," and moved on. I had no idea it was a whole cultural identity. And frankly, I got home from that first date and looked up Hungary on a map. Like, I had no idea. I was like, "From where? Where is that?" And when I talk to people, they go, "Oh, yeah, Eastern Europe, right?" "Nope, Central." And so, like,
Hmm.
one of the things I'm learning now is geography. I was never great. I was never great at geography, but now I'm trying to learn all the countries that are around us and all that and whatever. So, like, I literally had no idea what I was getting myself into, but we came to get his mom settled, and I fell in love with the city. And when we decided that, we needed to be here, and we got moved, I fell in love with the city all over again. I will say it's taken a while. We had to do a lot of back and forth to get me here permanently, but now that I am, it's a whole new level of like seeing the city as a resident and not just a 2 or 3 day tourist. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, I still play tourist. And so like I love that, right? So specific to the city, as far as like when I'm playing tourist or entertaining friends or somebody comes in, one of the fun things that we've done is I'm involved in quite a few online groups, and somebody will say, "Hey, I'm in Budapest for 2 or 3 days. What should I do?" And okay, everybody gives the same advice. I don't need to chime in on that. But when somebody says, "Hey, I'm here for 10 days. I'm here for a month." I'm like, "Hey, we should meet up for coffee." And then we show them the city and like in their first couple of days so that they really get a good idea of what they want to see in that month that they're here, right? So the first thing for me is always if they have time and they're going to be here a while, it's always to put them on the number 2 tram. So
Uh-huh.
public transit here is amazing, and it's very easy, it's very user friendly, and it's almost always on time, or you get a notification that it isn't, so you can plan. But the 2 is actually one of the trams that runs along the Danube River, the Duna, and it basically gives you a front row seat to, like, Parliament and the Castle District and a bunch of other stuff, the National Theater and whatever. So you hop on one end and ride it all the way to the other end. It's about 20 minutes, and it's the best sightseeing tour in town, particularly if we're like navigating, right? And so we usually start with that. It just sort of orients you to the city, and it gives people a chance to figure out like what they want to see more of, right? I will say, I mentioned public transit. I'm going to take a little side loop. If you're a hail a cab kind of person, yeah, don't, because you can't do that here. But you can download the Uber app ahead of time or the Bolt app ahead of time, and the cabs are actually great, but you do have to order them through the app. You can't just like flag them down on the city, like on the street, because the people who do that are freelancers who will typically um, not be your best friend. And so, so
Right.
we always recommend transit passes, and there's lots of different ones that you can get, but they're amazing. And transit is the easiest way to see the city 'cause it is a walkable city, but it is a lot of walking. So hop on, hop off with the transit, and it's fabulous. So always that. I typically, love to have people go with us or on their own to the thermal baths. Budapest is very well known for the thermal baths, and most people hit up Széchenyi, which is the biggest one and also the most expensive. So if you're traveling on a budget, there are other options. If you're in it for the eye candy, then Széchenyi is where you want to go, or Rudas. Rudas also is very lovely. They have an outdoor observation area that has amazing views. So I do recommend that too. But for us, We're a little bit more local. So we go, well, we live on the Pest side. So we go over to the Buda side and we go to Lukács. And I love it because it's where the locals go. And I can't understand a word of what's going on around me, and that in and of itself sometimes is relaxing. But it's really cool because, like, the spring itself, the use of it dates back all the way to, like, the 12th century, but the structure, the building itself is a remnant from the Ottoman Empire. And so, Turkish baths and what have you. And you can actually still see some of the original brickwork when you're on the inside. It's been rebuilt around it, but you can still see some of it. And then, you're soaking in this medicinal water and the whole way into the building, which this is one of the unique things about Lukács. There's a path that takes you from the street back to the actual building itself. And on the side of the building, there are these um, tablets or plaques, I guess. And each one of them is a testimony from somebody who came there from healing. And some of them are literally like from the early 19 there's only one up there that's in English. And it is from a woman who came from New York to Budapest in the early 1900s for the medicinal waters at Lukács. And they come from everywhere. And it's been for hundreds of years that they've done this. And it's just really cool to like think about that. And like most people there are local. So like I said, I can't understand a word that's going on. But we love any of the baths. That's the one we like, but we'll go to any of them that anybody wants to look at. So
Sure.
also
Yeah.
super cool thing. There are a ton of, like, walking tours that you can take, bus tours that you can take, all the things. It's great for history
Mhm.
buffs, but I will say this, some of them are kind of dry, and I encourage you to skip the dry ones. I have a better alternative, and I tell everybody who's coming to the city this because it is an incredible, not very well-known tour. But if you like to take a walk a little bit on the darker side of history, there is a tour called Bloodthirsty Hungary. It takes place in the Castle District, so it's amazing views, right? It's a nighttime walking tour, outdoors, and so you get to see the whole city lit up. You'll see Parliament lit up, you'll see the castle lit up, the bridges are lit up, everything's lit up. You'll see a amazing sights, I mean, it is stunning, but along the way, you have a costumed tour guide who talks about some of the stories. So you'll hear about Elizabeth Bathory, also known as the Blood Countess. You'll hear about the Dracula family. Real person, right? Not Hungarian. He's not Hungarian, but he impacted Hungary's history significantly. The whole family, and so there those stories. So it ends up being sort of equal parts like drop dead gorgeous, great photo ops, and ooh,
Yeah.
perhaps I should keep my neck covered. Like, it's just really cool. It's very well done, and I don't think enough people know about it. So, I take every
Mhm.
opportunity to tell people that's the tour you wanna book if you're into, not the standard run of the mill, this is when it was built and this is what you're looking at. This is a little bit more intriguing than that, and I said I'm a storyteller. So, I'm all about the storytelling tours, and that one's a really good one. And of course, you can't come to Hungary without food.
100%.
Like, food is the big thing, right? So, I personally am a devotee of street food. Like, I love
Mm.
langos.
Mhm.
For anybody who doesn't know what langos is, it's a little bit of magic in your mouth. It's basically fried dough, and then on top of that, they put enough sour cream to, like, sink a ship, and they lace it with some garlic, and then they sprinkle some cheese on top, and that's the classic, and it's amazing, and you can get all kinds of funky toppings on it, but stick with the classic. Langos is everywhere. Some of it is better than others, some of it is cheaper than others, but all of it's good. And then if you're, like, looking for something sweet instead, because some people are savory, some people are sweet. I eat it all, so but if you're looking for something sweet, you just have to follow your nose. If you're walking around the city, you'll smell, sugar in the air. literally, like caramelized sugar in the air, and just keep following it, and you'll end up at a kurtosh kalach stand, which is chimney cake. So again, dough. I like dough, I guess, but it's wrapped on a rod and cooked over coals,
Okay.
and it forms the shape of a chimney. And if you get it hot and fresh, the steam comes out just like a chimney, which is why it's called a chimney cake.
Ah,
They're on every corner. And again, some of them are better than others, but that's absolutely like the thing to get. I know that some people who travel on the loftier side. I'm not one of them, but we do have 7 Michelin star restaurants in Budapest proper. So plenty of fancy, if fancy is what you're looking for. Um, I tend a little bit not quite that far on the scale. So I really love when we have guests, we usually take them to a place called Hell's Kitchen Hungary. So it's very it's a very traditional country type, like from the country versus the city, country type restaurant. Um, but it's very tourist friendly. So the waiters speak English. They speak Hungarian too, but if you're coming
gotcha.
without
Yeah.
my translator, um, then you still can order, and there's musicians and traditional food, and it's set up traditionally like you would have a family restaurant in the country. So we love that, but I have one, like, super pro tip that we share with everybody, and that is look for the local spots. Like, get off the main road, find a small spot that has a nappy menu, which is it's a daily menu. So basically it's during the lunchtime hours, like 11 to 3 or so, and you get a soup and a main dish for just a few bucks, and it will be authentic. So goulash, paprikash, whatever, but it's going to be better than any of the tourist traps. So that is like my like top tip is find one of the little local places and eat there. I will
Awesome.
warn you, I like, as far as local menu goes, I'm sort of a, like, try anything once kinda girl.
All right.
Some things have been truly amazing. I mean, like, understand that I am living in a country that considers lard a primary food group, okay? So, like, some things I'm sort of like, "What is that? No, don't tell me. Just let me eat it first." And sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes it's like, "Well, I can tell people I tried it."
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, that's absolutely my top tip is eat local, like, try the authentic food.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could go on and on, but that's probably enough.
No, it's been amazing. Like I mentioned already, right? It's been years, but I did spend some time in Budapest. Very lucky enough to, and that was one of the main things I remember. I don't even know if it was necessarily street food per se, but the
Yeah.
soups for sure were
Mhm.
amazing. And like, it's not that I don't like soups, but it wasn't, at least in the states. It's not really. It was never something that I was really like, soups, whatever. But
Yeah.
if I'm sick, okay, but over in here, like it just really stood out as just
Mhm.
it didn't matter what soup, they were
Right.
all amazing. So,
Yeah.
so that totally makes
Soup is an
sense.
art
I
form
believe I had
here.
a tummy check as well. Say it again. Sorry.
Soup is an art form here.
Mm,
And I think a
100%.
lot of it a lot of it just comes from their history, right? I mean, Hungary has a very long history of being occupied by somebody else and of really sort of being, um, I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but really deprived maybe of a lot of things, right? Like a lot of the things that we would take for granted anywhere else. And so they really learned to survive on what they had, right? And so a lot of times that is meat that you've smoked and or stewed for a long time and it's root vegetables, right? So all of that goes further when you put it in soup. And so I think a lot of the dishes that they have are really hearty even though they're really basic. And then what's happening now as they become sort of a more globally recognized city is there are restaurants in town that their whole menu is taking a traditional Hungarian dish and leveling it up, right? And so both of those have value, right? Because you love the roots of like my grandmother's grandmother's grandmother made this. Like it's truly a family recipe, right? And then you have also like, okay, but let's put a little twist on it and it'll be fun. And it is. And so it's just amazing to see those two things come together in one space and blend so nicely instead of competing
Yeah.
with each other. It's not one or the other, it's both and.
Yeah. You kinda covered it, with that and something earlier as well, but can you talk a little bit more on the food as being a food as cultural connection, as you put it?
Sure. I think that's true in most cultures that food connects you. And I will say that the American connection is very, very different than the Hungarian connection. And one of the first things that I noticed when I got here is that Hungary is a very community oriented. This part of Budapest is very community oriented. There are gathering places, right? So there's a cafe culture, there's a pub culture, not so much a restaurant culture because people eat in their family homes. And some of that is the cost, and some of that is the history, right? It's the culture. It's we're family oriented or we're neighborhood oriented, and we share meals with people, and so it's really cool to see that because I didn't see that much in the US, right?
Mm.
People kind of stick to themselves. You don't know your neighbors, you don't eat meals with your
Yeah.
neighbors, you know, you might go out to a restaurant by yourself, you might go out with your spouse or your partner, or you might go out with your whole family for a celebration, but dining is sort of um singular, really, like, in the
Mhm.
US, I think.
Mm.
And here
Yeah.
it's much more of a connection. Like, even if you just like, if you stop and get langos at one of the street vendors, right? And then you're standing there on the sidewalk eating it, 3 other people also ordered langos and are talking to you. I have no idea what they're saying, but I talk to my husband. But tourists do it too, right? So in English, sometimes it actually is me. And it's just interesting to see how people really come out of their shell and connect over food. And recipes, like I said, are passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. Um, and it's one of the things that uh, is sort of interesting to see because Hungarians are a proud people. Like they've had a really painful history, but they're very proud of their culture and the heritage that they pass on. So my husband's parents, both were Hungarian, and they came out separately in the 1956 revolution and immigrated to the U.S. They met in the U.S., but
Mm.
they both came out in the same year. And
Gotcha.
so when they had children, they made a very intentional choice to teach him Hungarian, to teach him the language, to teach him the culture, to teach him the food, to teach him all those things. They said, "You're gonna get plenty of English and American stuff in school, at home, and with your cousins, and in the neighborhood, and at the Hungarian church and whatever. You're gonna speak Hungarian, and you're gonna eat Hungarian
Yeah.
food, and you're gonna learn how to make it." Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we kinda had that going for us when we got here, is he really has, you know, he spent summers here at his aunt's farm, because it was out on the western border of Hungary, because back then it was cheaper for his mom to send him to Hungary for the summer than to send him to summer camp while she was working 2 jobs, you know? So and he's a phenomenal cook. I have a kitchen because it came with the house, but he's a really good cook, and so I really have gotten a chance to learn to love the Hungarian food, most of it. Some of it I will take a hard pass on, but most of it is really good. And, um, and and it's funny to watch Hungarians battle it out over who makes the best goulash or who makes the best chicken paprikash or who makes the best portabaju pancakes, you know, whatever, palichinta, whatever it is. And so I mean, it's a real point of pride here,
Yeah.
to be able to cook well and to provide for your family and your neighbors and your friends that way. And then like any culture, they have specialties for certain holidays. So there's things that are only available at Christmas, and we make sure we get some because they're going away, like, I love bagely. Bagely is, like, my favorite sweet, not really sweet treat, but pastry, but it's only available at Christmas time, so I put on 10 pounds just eating bagely at Christmas, right? And then you gotta figure out how to get it off, but you just go to the park and walk the dog. Um, but yeah, so food is a huge connector here. It's very much, a product of their history.
Awesome. A few questions and kind of going back a bit. I
Mhm.
know also you mentioned the tram earlier. Just for context, how much do you have to pay for the tram and how much would that be?
Yes. So there are different ways that you can use, public transit here, and, when I say transit and pass, it covers all the forms of transit. So there's a tram, there's a trolley, there's a train, there's the metro, and there's buses. Okay. So, like any possible way you could think of to get around town except a cab is covered by the transit pass. And there's lots of different ways that you can utilize that depending on how long you're going to be here. So they offer us single tickets. So you can purchase a ticket, validate the ticket, go one ride. So from wherever you get on to wherever you get off. If you get off someplace and change to another transit to go further on to your destination, that's another ticket. So a lot of people don't do individual tickets because it gets a little bit confusing. Um, they offer a 10 ticket pass. So that also is an option. If you know you're going to be doing mostly walking, but you want to have the option to hop on. Um, Personally, I always recommend the monthly pass, even if you're only going to be here for 3 days, because you will use it and it's not that expensive. Um, there's 2 different types. One is for actually in the city, just within the city limits. So if you're not going outside of Budapest at all, that's the one you want, and it's about, they just changed the prices on it, so I don't wanna quote a price because I don't wanna be wrong, but it's under $20. And then the one that we use is actually for Pest County. So Pest County encompasses the city of Budapest, but it is massive. And it also includes, cute little towns that you've seen on the internet, like Senendra. If you've ever seen a picture from near Budapest that is an old cobblestone street with umbrellas hanging at the top, that's Senendra. It's a 30-minute train trip, and it's covered in the Pest Pass. You can go to Vats, you can go anyway, there's the list is huge. We usually recommend that just because by the time it just frees your mind up. You can hop on and hop off anything you want to in like an hour range. And so it covers the metro, which is the subway, or the tube, depending on where you're from. But it's the metro here. And then the tram is the one that runs on rails. They're yellow. Um, the trolley is basically electric buses, they're red. There's also gasoline buses that are blue, and the train that leaves Budapest and goes to other towns, Dunakeszi and Vats and all the other places. So all of those are covered on this one pass. You can get a physical pass. There's ticket kiosks at every stop. But you can also just get the app on your phone. So anybody that's coming to Budapest, that is what we recommend is just go ahead and it's called Budapest Go. It's from BKK and just put the app on your phone. It does navigation. It tells you like it, it's the equivalent of Google Maps within their app. And so, but it tells you, it color codes things for you so you know which piece of transit you're looking for. So, like, if you're looking for the tram, the instructions are in yellow. If you're looking for the trolley, the instructions are in red. So it's easier to go, okay, I'm looking at red on my phone and that's red on the street. Those match. Okay, I'm good. For those of us who are directionally challenged, that's super helpful. But it gives you the times you can plan a trip, you can buy your tickets there. If you have that, then you don't have to validate every time you get on and off. Um, if you buy tickets, you do have to validate them when you board the transit. They do have people who come by and check tickets. It's very, very random. but the fines are very, very steep. So, it's wise for visitors to just go ahead and buy the pass, and then you don't have to worry about it the whole time you're here. It's like a one and done, I don't have to think about it. But there are smaller options if you're especially if you're not gonna be here for more than 48 hours, that's not worth it, but if you're gonna be here for 4 or 5 days, it's definitely it sounds ludicrous to do a month-long pass for 4 days, but it's honestly pretty economical, so
That makes sense. And then, as you said, it just makes things easier, less things to worry about as you
correct.
get on and off. Makes sense.
Yes.
You brought up two more things for you. You brought up, and you had in your notes the day trip to, say it again, Sandendro?
Szentendre, yep.
Yes.
So it means Saint Andrew.
Talk a little bit more about there.
Sure, it like I said, it's not far, it's about 30 minutes outside of the city by train, and it is a small town. The main town proper is right at the train station. It's just a short walk. It is full of artists mostly. There's a lot of artist galleries, and also a lot of small shops, so artisanal type things. So anything from leather goods to tchotchkes to, like, traditional Hungarian things. There's a year-round Christmas shop that is incredible, and it's so fun because there's one little section that is, like, Christmas through the ages. So it's like the evolution of Hungarian Christmas ornaments. And then they have any type of ornament in any color you would want to buy is there. So the Christmas shop is really fun. There's several little street shops. So anything from ice cream, which is not great this time of year, but it's really nice when it's 95 degrees in the summer or 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. Um, and so there's lots of those. There's several restaurants. Actually, there is a Michelin starred restaurant in Szentendre as well. I didn't count that in the 7 in Budapest proper, but there's one in Szentendre as well. You do need a reservation if you're gonna go there. Uh, but, there's also, like, all kinds of food shops, and there's quite a lot of historical architecture there as well. It has its roots in Serbia. So there's a Serbian church, and there's, a lot of Serbian references kind of in that area, which is really, it's really interesting to sort of explore that because you're standing there and your hand is on a brick that is older than the US,
Mm. Yeah.
you know? So it's like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh." And, and you think about, like, all the things I've read about in history books. Like, I think coming from the US, we're not well versed in world history or geography, typically.
Yeah. I
And
think that's
some
fair.
people are, but
Yeah.
typically, I don't think, we get kinda wrapped up in ourselves sometimes.
Hmm.
And
At
so
least
then
what
when
we
you're
are taught in school for sure. Yeah.
right, right. And so then when you're standing in this place, right, and you go, "Oh my gosh, this is from, you know,
Hmm.
700,
Yeah.
1,000 years before the US was even thinking about being a nation, this was standing here,"
Yeah.
it's incredible. But the people in San Andra are really friendly. There's a lot of little, just places to stop and browse. A lot of shops, a lot of art galleries, quite a few restaurants, town square, and, it also sits on, it's a little bit further up the river, so there's also, like, riverside. So if you're there during the summer, it's not as great in the winter. But if you're there in the summer, you can actually, like, take your shoes off and go into the river if you want to. There's a little beach type area there, and several restaurants that face the river, which that is fun in the winter. We were actually just there a couple of weeks ago. Somebody who was visiting from out of town, and we said, "Oh, you have to see San Andra." And so we took her there, and we went to one of the restaurants that faces the river, and so, um recently, in our cold snap, the river froze over,
Oh wow.
which hasn't happened in, like, 2 decades, but it did, and so by the time we got there, though, most of that had broken up, but so we're sitting in this restaurant that overlooks the river, and we're watching these ice flows go
Mm.
down the duna, And then it started to snow, and there's like a skating rink there that's seasonal. So, I mean, there's lovely things to do no matter what time of year you're there. So, if you're there in the summer, you can take your shoes off and go in the Duna. If you're there in the winter, you can, you can just watch people skate and stay warm in the restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Super cool. And then last, you brought up as well. So obviously Budapest is kind of split into two parts.
Yeah.
I guess the bridge kind of connects the two, right? So
Mhm.
you mentioned you live on the Pest side, and then
Yeah.
obviously there's the Buda side. Can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit more about the differences between the two?
Sure, of course. So we chose the Pesh side when we decided where we wanted to be because it is a little more urban, a little more modern, which means a lot more English. And for me, that was important. For him, doesn't matter, but for me, that was important. So in terms of residents, the Pesh side tends to be um, a little more diverse. So you have anything from students at the university to families with young children to retired people to what I like. But Pest is sort of the busy side. And it's where a lot of the commerce is markets and malls and transit and all kinds of things. So that's kind of the Pest side. It's sort of busier. Um, it's where most of the nightlife is, if that's I'm a little past my prime, but
Yeah.
still, but, bars and restaurants, clubs, schools, churches, everything. Pesh side has all of that. The Buddha side is a little more quiet, not quite as busy. And the Buddha side is the hills. So the Pesh side is flat. The Buddha side is the hills. It contains the castle district. So Fisherman's Bastion, St. Matthias Church, Buda Castle, the National Archives, all kinds of stuff. There on Castle Hill. My favorite is the Rose Garden. So, Barkert Bazaar is lovely. Um, but it also is a little more family oriented. So, families who are raising children, especially if they are not very small children, it's a little bit more geared also toward retirees, although not so much as it used to be. But it's also a little bit more academic. So there's quite a few universities on that side and training facilities and labs and that kind of thing on the Buddha side. Um, a lot of pictures that you see of the city, you're seeing the Buddha side. It's a little bit more picturesque. And a lot of the views, other than Parliament, a lot of the views that you see on the internet or in photos or whatever, you're typically looking at the Buddha side. Um, so it's a lot more touristy than the Pest side in some ways. Um, but in other ways, you know, both sides have something to offer. Like I said, we chose the Pest side just because there was a higher likelihood that people would speak English while I was getting my feet under me. And I mean, I grew up in next to a farm and a cornfield and then lived in the suburbs for most of my life. And so what I kind of say is living in Pest is like living in the city and living in Buda is like living in the suburbs. Except they're all the same city. They're just divided by a river and connected by 6 bridges. And so uh I never thought I would be urban.
Yeah.
But here I am, and we walk everywhere. I don't have to drive anymore, which I absolutely love. And everything is within reach on this side because of transit and just everything's walkable. And there's always something to do. So we like the busyness of this side, but we also
Yeah.
have really good friends who live on the Buddha side and they love it too. So I mean, it just depends on
Yeah.
what you're looking for, which one is your happy place.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So then, as far as Budapest, for this section, is there anything else you'd like to add, or are you ready to move on?
Um, I think I'm good.
Awesome. So we'll transition. Of course, now we earlier we learned more about you as a person. Now we're gonna learn get to know you more as a traveler. So obviously more so now you're kind of new to it all, so a little bit
Yeah.
different, but still getting to know you in that sense as well. Just to give a little context for as far as your overall travels, because um, I guess maybe you're a bit newer to international, but you did travel some within the U.S. as well. I know you mentioned the Midwest, which you're also from as well, Ohio area, and
Yep.
then a little bit of the Southeast also,
Mhm.
and then now, of course, living in Budapest, being there for 9 months. Is that correct? Was this like when did you do your first international travel, or was that move to Budapest that first time?
Well, you're gonna love this story. I thought this whole traveler part would be like a short conversation because I just don't have a lot of experience, but it's actually kind of interesting. I did grow up in the Midwest. Every year, my dad was a teacher, so every year, over summer break, we would take a trip as a family. And always educational component to it, and always someplace we could drive. So that was my first travel experience. And the one thing I remember about every trip is we would eat someplace we didn't have at home. So I'm pretty sure
Okay,
that might be where my obsession with food tied to culture started. And
sure.
that everything has to have an educational component to it. But anyway, the first time I actually even ever got on an airplane was an international trip. I was 16, I think, or 16-ish, 15 or 16. And I went with a group of other teenagers, 100 of us and a handful of chaperones, and I flew from Columbus, Ohio to Brisbane, Australia.
Mm, yeah.
Yes, that is a 24-hour flight for the very first time I was ever
Oh
on an
gosh.
airplane.
Oh. How long was the layover? I see. Yeah, obviously
Uh,
layovers.
so we left Columbus, we flew through LAX. That was an adventure for me. We changed planes in Hawaii, we changed planes in Fiji, and actually we landed in Sydney, then we took a bus from Sydney to Brisbane. But on the way back, we flew from Brisbane straight through LAX to Columbus. So we had at LAX, we we had a 90-minute layover for 100 teenagers getting from one end of the airport to the other. It was lovely. I don't remember a whole lot about the trip, honestly, because I was so young and travel was not part of my experience. I would love to go back. People say, "Oh, it's so cool you've been to Australia." And I'm like, "Yep, it probably was, but I don't know." But I do think that was the first time I realized that I could.
Yeah.
Um, and that people did. And then I got married, I had kids. We lived on a very meager budget, so traveling was not really an option. Um, and I did what we could, like, locally, like, to kind of, to at least, like, instill in the kids that there's something beyond your back door. Um, but we didn't do a whole lot. And then when I was closing in on the end of my 40s, I realized it was time to do something different. By that point, I was divorced, the kids were grown, and somehow that dream of traveling sort of started to resurface in ways that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
And so I started out with, day trips, something I could do from where in North Carolina, just something I could do, go for the day and come home. That went well. I had always done the trip to Ohio because that's where my family still is. Um, I learned how to do that trip by myself, driving. I also learned how to do that trip by myself, flying. Just depended on what needed to be done. But I also started, like, visiting friends in other parts of the country just to prove to myself that I could. So by the time I met my husband, um, I was ready. Like, I was ready to take that on. And he used to travel a lot for work. And so travel has sort of a different meaning for him than it does for me. And so we sort of worked that out together. And we both knew that we wanted to travel more than we had then before we met each other. Um, when we decided to move to Europe, that goal looked a lot more achievable, right? Because it's a lot easier to get to a lot of places when you're in Europe than when you're in the
Mhm.
US and trying to get overseas, because everything is overseas except Canada and Mexico, right? And so, like, that then was like sort of exciting. But I still didn't have a lot of experience. However, getting my visa was an adventure. The
Mm.
bureaucracy here is super fun. And so they offer a 90-day tourist visa with no, just with your pass, you just have to have your passport. So we did that and we set about the process of getting married and getting my temporary residency. So for a while, I did 3 months in Hungary, 3 months in the US with one kid, 3 months in Hungary, 3 months in the US with the other kid. Um, you get the picture. But I was
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
all those trips by myself.
Mm.
So I did a lot of international flights by myself. And it was really good for me. Like I went, I can do this. I know how to do this. And it's not scary. I mean, it was the first time. Like I didn't know what I
Uh-huh.
was doing. And we figured it out. And I will say it's not because I've taken the same trip every time. I've flown a different airline every single time I have flown that trip because
Gotcha.
of
Yeah.
the pricing, and
Sure.
and the timing and just the situation, whatever. So I sort of expanded that way. And then because of the way my visa worked, I also had 3 months where I wasn't allowed to leave Hungary while we
Mm.
waited on them to process my paperwork. And so,
Yeah.
during that time, we decided we would start to explore this country I know nothing about. So I did it the same way when I started traveling in the US, we started with a little day trip. Right? And then we did a little bit longer day trip, and then we've done a couple overnight trips, we've done a couple of long weekend trips. And now that I am, like, fully authorized to do whatever I want, now we've moved into starting to plan some of those around the world type trips that we've talked about, and we'll probably start with some of the countries that are nearby. So, Vienna is just over the border. It's not far. It's easy, whatever. But this is why I'm learning geography so that when people say, "Oh, where do you want to go?" I actually have an answer. Like, I don't even know what's possible. Let me look at a map and I'll get back to you, which I think a lot of people experience when they're first starting to travel, especially if it's as an adult because they never did it as a kid and they start as an adult. That's the first thing is pull out a map and listen to what speaks to you.
Yeah.
And then do the research and make sure it's possible. But like the first thing is like you gotta even figure out what you want to do. And I
Yeah.
realized I didn't have answers to that. So we bought a map.
Very good. Let me ask, and we'll kind of go, I'll see a bunch of different directions here.
Mhm.
I know you mentioned much earlier. I'll see. So you meet your husband, who I'll say was not your husband at the time, but you
Right.
meet him, get to know him, get married. At some point, yeah, you mentioned his mom rather wanted to eventually move back. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, like from the time, I guess maybe once you started verbalizing that, the time you got married to the time that you decided to make the move to Budapest, like how long did it go from, yeah, you being based in the States, right? Let's make the move, or making the decision to make the move and then making the move. Like how long was that period?
Um, it sort of happened in stages. So
Sure.
his mom had some health issues and
Mhm.
impeded her English language skills. So on top of the fact
Yeah.
that she wanted to come, she needed to come because we just weren't able
Yeah.
to care for her the way we needed to. So we brought her and got her settled. And during that trip, is when I saw how much he really wanted to be here.
Mm.
Um,
Gotcha.
and he saw how much he really wanted to be here, not just to take care of her,
Hmm.
to make sure she was taken care of, but just because the city just was calling to him, his heritage
Yeah.
and the architecture and the food and just all of the things, right? And so we get back to the US. We were here for 10 days, or 15 maybe. We get back to the US for a week or two. He's absolutely miserable, just miserable. So we have a conversation and we go, okay, so what's it take to move to Hungary? Um, he had always kind of had that plan in the back of his head for retirement, but he wasn't quite to retirement yet. So it kind of caught him off guard when I said, "What do we got to do?" And And he said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, let's figure it out." So we talked to some people in Hungary. We talked to some people in the US. We did a lot of research. And that was in May, like the end of May. And he moved in August. And I moved in
Wow.
September. Except I
Yeah.
wasn't able to stay. That September is when I started that 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, because at that
Yeah.
point, we actually weren't married yet.
Mm,
But we had
okay.
gotten some advice that we would be better off to get married in Hungary and register it in the US than the other way around. I will say that was bad advice, but it is the advice we got and the advice we acted on. And it complicated things significantly. But eventually, so that was 2 years ago. He's been here a little over 2 years. I have been here a little less than a year full time. Um, so that's kind of the time frame. Literally, he was here within 2 months of dropping her off, and it was easier because he had dual citizenship and knew the language, right? So he could just go ahead and move. And I also moved, and then we ran into a bunch of bureaucratic red tape, and I did the back and forth thing for about a year and a half. And then we finally were able to, like, it took us, I guess, 6 months to get my paperwork, and so I've been, like, squared away for a couple of months now, so that's kind
Uh-huh.
of the time frame, and I don't recommend that, by the way. Like, we really should have figured out some more details. We sorta leapt before we looked, and I don't recommend that, but sometimes that is what it takes to get you moving. Um
Yeah.
so like there's this fine line between like planning and prepping and like just do the thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And I know a lot of people who say, "Oh, I left my country with $200 in my pocket and I figured it out as I went." Like, good for you. I wish you it had been that
Yeah.
easy for me. And they never say it's easy. That's the thing. Nobody has ever said it's easy. They've only said it's doable and it's worth it. And I agree with both of those. It was doable and
Uh-huh.
it is absolutely worth it. But it was
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah. But to your point as well, and even what we talked about earlier, that imperfect action, right? And
Yeah.
now, man, maybe I'm
Yep.
sure there's still things to iron out, but you guys have definitely figured it out, and making it
Yeah.
work. So, um, better to make a move than to not at all, for sure.
Right.
Um,
Right.
cool. So next question with that then, as far as so obviously again, you're newer to travel,
Mhm.
or at least international traveler, and you kind of mentioned a few things already, right? But talk a bit more just about like getting started and learning as you go. So you mentioned a few specific things, obviously, but what were some of the
Yep.
harder adjustments for you, and maybe even still? And on the flip
Mhm.
side, what were some things maybe that were easier than you expected?
Sure. The first thing was, when you've spent your life traveling in a car where you can take whatever you want, and then you start traveling in one bag on an airplane or a train or a bus, it changes your packing a bit. So, and I'm historically an overpacker to start with, and so, like, learning to lighten up. What do I actually need versus why am I prepping for the worst kind of thing. And it's so funny because there's a shop that we walk past a lot of the places that we go, and Hungary has a lake, but no ocean, and there is a
Mm.
scuba shop. For why? And we talked about it, and I said, "Okay, but there are oceans within driving distance. So if people actually have a car, they can buy their scuba gear here and toss it in the trunk and not have to rent it when they get there. But for us, I've lightened up a lot." So that was one thing that was kind of I'm still learning how to pack lighter. Um, he jokes that I take 4 days worth of stuff on an overnight trip, and but, like, I'm still trying to figure out that whole, shoes thing, right? Like, I need a good pair of shoes, and, like, do I need a coat? Which coat should I take? And my toiletry bag is, like, a fourth of the size it used to be, right? Because I just don't need that much when I'm traveling. So, like, those are some of the things that I think, um like, from a very practical sense, like, you figure out what's important, and learn to pack lighter and smaller, and, partly because 'cause you're gonna carry it for most of the trip. And then I think um the biggest adjustment for me comes from my perfectionist nature.
Right.
So I've had to really learn how to flex when the plans change against my will.
Yeah.
So the train is late, or the hotel took our reservation but didn't keep it, or we stay in a lot of Airbnbs. That's not as much of a problem,
Yeah.
but just things change, right? Like, and I have never traditionally been very good at that. Like, I am a planner. Let's stick to the plan. And so, um, but when you start moving about the world, it stops being inside your control. And I love that actually. So as much as that has been one of my most difficult adjustments, it's also been one of the ones that has served me the best in the entirety of my life, not just in my travels. Learning how to pivot, learning how to be flexible, learning not to get flustered when things don't go exactly the way you thought they were going to. And so I think one of the other things that I noticed when I did start traveling more, um, is I realized how little I knew. Like, I feel like, we've talked about it. I grew up in sort of this little bubble, and I just didn't know how big the world was,
Mm.
or how many different people were in it, and how
Yeah.
they could
Yeah.
relate to one another, right? You hear so much discord, and so much separation, and so much like self-selection and that kind of thing. And that does exist, and I don't want to make light of that. But what I've seen is there are also so many people who want to connect and want to help and want to teach and want to learn and want to listen. And like my whole world, my little tiny like thought process world has just expanded exponentially. Um, and it's made me, it's interesting because I have some friends who don't travel a whole lot, and they worry for me when I'm out in the world because the world is such a scary place, right? And I get that. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, I don't want to say I'm less worried, but I'm worried about different things and in different ways than I used to be. And so that's been sort of the upside that I wasn't expecting, was how much of a better person I was going to become. And I'm still, I mean, not that I've arrived. Like, I'm not saying that, but like I feel like every trip we take expands me a little bit more.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. That makes sense in general. Like that's a when I talk about me for a little bit. When I did my first trip, it was supposed to be a 2 month thing to France, which I chose randomly, kind of. But 2 months there, come back home, figure things out. Um, that trip ended up being 4 months. I did the two in France, two in Spain. Came back home, ended up working on a cruise ship, and then so now it's been what 14 years or something of some form of traveling. So not what
Right.
I planned, not what I expected, but a lot of that is because I see myself evolving and learning things that are from
Mhm.
travel that I don't think, I don't know what it would have been like if I never continued. And even if it
Right.
was just that first 2 month 4 month trip, even still a lot of great things from it. So
Right.
it's definitely one of the best things, if not the best thing, I think to learn and grow as a person for sure. Um, so with that, you kind of definitely mentioned a few things there, but how would you say travel has challenged your mindset, or the travels you've done so far, or just helped you grow overall? And then, were there any like specific earlier or past mistakes through the travels that ended up teaching you something important that you can think of?
Um, well, like I said, I'm looking for a good pair of shoes. So that's the big thing. I mean, most of what we're doing is it's a lot of walking. And I that's not what I was used to. So that's been one of the biggest hurdles, is getting the right equipment and the right, like mindset and body set to be able to do these things. So pacing is really important. I think we overplan. I think we try and pack too many things in and we don't leave enough space for rest when we're on vacation.
Mhm.
Um, and we don't leave enough space for exploring, right? We pack a schedule so full that we need a vacation from our vacation. And one of the things that's been interesting here, I'm an expat. So, you know, people have this idea about expats that it's just like a perpetual vacation, like you're just on vacation all the time. Not true.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not true. It's just not true. Um, Vacation is one thing, and ingraining yourself into a whole new culture is completely different. Like you are shifting all of your internal circuitry. Um, and when we visited, to bring his mom, when we visited, we intentionally stayed, 10 or 15 days and stayed in an Airbnb that would feel like living here. And we tried to really like get the feel of living here versus being here for a week on vacation. Like we were very intentional about that. Um, and it worked to a certain degree, right? Because 15 days is still a vacation. 2 months is still a vacation. 9 months I live here now, right? And so it's just been this huge mental shift for me to move into the expat life. And and it has, ups and downs, obviously. I mean, there's good things and bad things, two sides of the same coin. Um, I think for me, I've really tried to be a student versus a citizen here. Citizenship isn't really the goal, but like a lot of people come into a new culture and they want their culture in this city, right? So like they still want to be American in Budapest. Um, and the opposite is also true. They come in and they try and be Hungarian when they don't really know enough about Hungarian to be Hungarian. And so I've been trying to kind of live in the center space between those. Like I'm not trying to make Budapest Raleigh or
Yeah.
Charlotte or whatever, but I'm not Hungarian. Look, I'm just not. But so, you study. And I think that's true whether you're there short term on vacation or whether you're there long term as an expat. Like observe. Observe the rhythm around you. Notice how people drink their coffee or how they greet their neighbors or get curious about why they look so serious on the tram all the time. I don't know, but then for me, that next step is like I'm trying to build sort of a bilingual life, but it's not just about language, right? So I've I have never learned a foreign language. So I started with one of the hardest ones on the planet. Yay me. And they all laugh. They're like, "Oh, way to start with an easy one." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." But like linguistically, yes, I'm trying to learn some of the obviously I'm doing a great job when the coffee guy says English is fine, but I am trying. But it's also like socially, you're trying to be bilingual as well. So a lot of people get trapped kind of in that expat bubble, right? They move to a new country, but then they spend all of their time with expats,
Mm,
which
yeah.
which is not so great. Like, yes, you need that expat bubble because you need somebody who's going through something similar, and you need to be able to find out where you can buy hot dogs or hot dog buns that work or whatever it is. I mean, there's all kinds of weird stuff here we've gone, "How do we make this work?" Like, I'm still an American in my some of my food choices. Where can I find that? So it's great to have that community that can, like, answer that question, that can point you to the right office, the right government office, or the right this or that, the been there, done that people, right? Who know what you're experiencing. And especially for me, that's especially important when I'm feeling homesick, right?
Yeah.
I can talk to somebody else who gets what I'm talking about and doesn't look at me like they have no idea. So it's good to have that, but it's also like really important to get ingrained in the local culture as well. We have
Mm.
a couple of pubs that we go to, and we walk in and they know our names. They have a hard time saying mine because it's not the spelling of
Really?
mine does not exist in Hungarian letters. I mean, the
Huh.
letters exist, but they make different sounds, and they finally have it. I've been here 9 months, they finally have it, but, like, we go in and it's like a Cheers-esque moment, right? Like, we
Mm,
walk in and they all
mm,
know us and by name, and they know well, his drink order, mine changes, but it's so funny because they'll be pouring his drink before we even sit down because they just know us there. In the market, like, if he goes to the market without me, they ask, "Where is she?" He's like, "Why would she come to the market? She doesn't use the kitchen." But but they know me, right? They've seen me around
yeah.
town and whatever, and so, like, to have both of those, to have that little expat bubble for that purpose,
Mhm.
but also to be, like, in the local community, and that's why I encourage people to eat local when they're here because then you get to really see how that looks, and just sort of bridging that. So, um, yeah, I mean, sometimes you get invited to really weird stuff and you just say yes. You go, "Okay, sure." I mean, like I said, I'm sort of I'll try anything once and like
Yeah.
we've been to some really bizarre things since I've been here because people they want us to see their culture and they want us to eat their food and I'm all for
Mhm.
that, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, "Oh my gosh, does this happen every year?" And other times I'm like, "Whoo, let's never do that again." But I feel like, that yes mentality makes a big difference, right? It's a big shift for me to just say, "Sure, why not?"
Mhm.
Um,
Awesome.
yeah,
I love that.
it
I
builds
love that it
resilience.
seems to yeah. I love that it seems to have 'cause, well, I don't know if I really spent time on the Pest side, but Budapest overall is a pretty big place. But I love that it sounds like still it seems to have like a small town type feel. You mentioned obviously like the cheers and the bar and everything, and I not necessarily routine, but at least you have your spots and you're definitely
Yeah.
getting localized to the area as well.
Mhm.
Super cool.
Yep, yep,
Um,
it is.
before I wanna double check. Sorry, because I know we started late because a bunch of different things, and then we're at the 90-minute mark. Are you still okay for time?
Yeah,
I know it's later on your side as well.
yeah, I'm good. We're good.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Um, I want to do a soft transition to your travel topic, but this still very much relates to the traveler. So I will give you an opportunity to add anything else with that section after I ask this one. But our travel topic is living like a Hungarian and starting a business abroad. But I had one other question as far as living like a Hungarian. I know we talked a lot about it, obviously, but with that, like, is there where are we at here? You mentioned somewhere like living as a Hungarian,
Mhm,
uh, you got to live sort of simply, affordably, and be connected. You kind of covered all those things.
mhm.
What does your day to day actually look like now?
It's good. It's so different than anything I've ever done before. As I've talked about, I worked a 9 to 5 for a long time. Um, 25 years, probably more than that actually if you put everything all together, but, I worked for somebody else in an office 9 to 5. COVID changed things a little bit for me because I was able to work from home, and that's where I realized I wanted to work from home. Like, I'm
Mm.
more productive
Yeah.
that way. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things that was super important day to day here for 2 reasons, was being able to run my own business from home. One of the reasons is just because I that's where I'm at in my life. One of the reasons is because the visa that I'm on, which is family reunification, does not guarantee me the right to work here in Hungary. Um, and a lot of companies currently are reluctant to sponsor a work visa for somebody for a variety of reasons, from the paperwork is too complicated to we don't know who we can trust to on and on and on, all kinds of reasons. But I can't work for a Hungarian company on the visa that I'm on unless they want to do all of the paperwork to sponsor it. So it then became important that I could do my work from home, on my own terms, run my own business. And I never wanted to do that, but here we are. And because of that, and because my husband is also semi-retired, um, we schedule our own days, schedule our own weeks. He does have a job that he works very part-time, a couple of days a week, so we schedule around that. But we were able to help our neighbors get their new candy shop open last week. We're able to take a trip out of town when we both look at each other and go, I am worn down. We can schedule trips in the middle of the week when there aren't so many tourists. We can hit the tourist spots when we know the tourists aren't there. Transition day is Thursday, by the way. And so our day to day is really not necessarily the same every day. It's sort of wake up and what do we feel like doing today? I mean, so we eat at home a lot. Like I said, he's a really good cook, so we do eat at home a lot, but we have several places that we frequent for lunch or for dinner, depending, when we just want to go out. We do the touristy thing sometimes. We just full on like, let's go be tourists because there's still so much of the city I haven't seen. Um, so we do that sometimes too. But it's really, we go to the market, we go to the store, we get what we need, we watch American television. I mean, like, it's not, I mean, we watch Hungarian television too. Let me tell you, it is a trip watching American football with a Hungarian commentator. It is a trip. And so, but like things that we would normally do, normally this weekend we would go to a Super Bowl party, right? But that doesn't really
Yeah.
happen here because the game is at 1:30 in the morning. The
Yeah.
time difference. So it's like the bars aren't open where, whatever. So like there've been some adjustments, but just day to day, it's really quite normal for us. It's we go sit in the park and people watch. We go to the mall, whatever. It just sort of depends on the day. I obviously I what that means is the biggest challenge for me is getting the work done. Right? Like,
Yeah.
set
Yeah.
like, turning on work brain, turning off like, when your office is in your living room, you have to kinda, like, figure out how to trigger yourself to, "Okay, I'm not at home now, I'm at the office," kinda thing, and I need to
Yeah.
get the work
Yeah.
done. And so for me, one of the things that we have done is I have made a little sign that goes on. I don't have a door, so we live in a pretty open flat, so I don't have an office door.
Mhm.
Normally, I would go in the office and close the door, but I don't have a door, so I made a little sign for the side of my desk, and I hang it on the side of my desk, and it says, "It's work time," and it has a cute little picture on it, and that way, when he comes through the flat, he knows it's work time, I can't bother her,
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
and when it's been work time for too long, he comes over and removes the sign. It says it's not work time anymore. And so that's been like one of the bigger challenges actually of working for myself is, when you work in the space where you live, how do you make sure that you're separating the two and you're not
Yeah.
working too much and you're also not slacking off too much because that temptation is there too. It's like, "Oh, I'll just do it tomorrow because there's no boss like telling me I have to have it done today, right?" And especially in the beginning, a lot of it's less work and more marketing and
Mhm.
so, like,
Yeah.
forcing
Yeah.
myself to sit, like if I have an author who's handed me their book to edit and they have a deadline, it's a lot easier for me to sit down at the desk and edit, right? But when it's just, "Oh, I gotta put myself out there today," it's a little bit harder to, like, shift into work mode and do that, but I work he works in the evenings when he works, so I tend to work when he works because that makes it easier for both of us. But I also work a lot when he's here, so we've had to sort of figure it out in this open
Yeah.
space that we share. So, yeah.
Awesome. I think it'll be a good that's a good spot to sort of transition into the more the you starting a business abroad. But did you
Uh-huh.
have anything else that you would like to add as far as yourself as a traveler, living like a Hungarian as well before we move on?
Yeah, we're good.
Awesome. So with as you were speaking about the business, I'm curious, what do you feel like has been harder, and then what's maybe been more encouraging than you expected about obviously starting the business while also living abroad?
Mhm. What has been absolutely harder than I anticipated is all of the, legal ramifications. So, tax code and business-wise and setup and accountants and lawyers and this and that and paperwork and, oh, by the way, I changed my name in the middle of all of that, which complicated things.
Mm.
And also, interesting, one of the reasons it complicated things is because that's not Hungarian custom for a woman to take her husband's last name. And so when I
Okay.
wanted to do that, they were like, "What are you doing?" And then trying to change all of my US documentation from abroad has proved significantly harder than we anticipated. But I really do think that that has absolutely been the hardest part for me is making sure I'm legally square in 2 countries.
Hmm.
It's just not as easy as it should be. But that's kind of the ugly part of it, I guess. The really good thing that has come out of it, so far, and I'm not very deep into that yet either, but, I've met some really incredible people, both physically in person in Budapest as I meet people and, they ask me what I do and I get to tell them and I'm excited about it. That's new for me to be excited and proud about what I do. And so that's been really fun. And online, one of the things that happens when you don't have your regular network is you build a new one. And
Yeah.
so, I in the same way that I don't have my regular grocery store, so we find a new grocery store. I don't have my regular circle of we're in the same time zone. And so I've had to learn how to navigate time zones because I don't want to lose those people, but also to connect with people who are in a similar situation to me. They're living abroad or they're running their own business or both, et cetera. And so I really have started to meet a lot of people, and they sometimes have a very different impression of me than I have of myself because my brain is still in some of its old habits. And so to have
Mm.
people who come alongside and encourage and say, "Oh, I see this in you, or I see that in you, or let me connect you to this person that I think can help, or whatever," has been fabulous. And that's part of the reason that I'm so committed to doing that for other people as well, because I know how much that has meant to me. Plus, as an editor, I just get to read some really cool stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So now, just from the sake of about of obviously building the business, which if it wasn't clear, obviously is proofreading and editing, just in case. But
just in case that hasn't been obvious
yes,
yet.
has there? We talked a lot about perfection so far, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you say like kind of letting go of that perfection and sort of how your mindset has changed with that over time? Would you say that's helped or maybe even challenged yourself in this sort of phase as far as building the business?
Yeah,
And
I
if
think
so,
it's
how so?
been yeah, I think it's been absolutely necessary to let go of that perfectionism, because you can't get it right the first time.
Hmm.
Because if you're building it from your own head, it's not it's just in your own head, right? So it's when you actually start talking to people and hearing their words and their needs and their pain points. Um, One of the things that I've really had to shift toward in building my own business is I've had a lot of jobs that were task oriented, right? So here's a list, complete the task. And that's great. I'm good at that. But this is much more, results oriented, right? Like, how can I help? How can I affect change? How can I encourage? How can I, what outcome is it that you need from me? Now, a task list comes out of that because there are certain steps you have to take to achieve those outcomes. But I'm much more relational based and outcome based than I used to be. And I've always kind of been that way, even in jobs that were really task-based jobs. I never treated them that way. kind of how I knew this is the direction I needed to go on my own because I was sort of doing it even though that wasn't really the job they were paying me for. And so yeah, I think that's kind of the perfectionism can certainly slow me down. In the business part of it, obviously the perfectionism serves me well in the editing part, right? Because I'm super concerned about the tiniest of details and I want to get it absolutely right because it has my name and your name on it, kind of thing. But so it's kind of a double-edged sword for me, this perfectionism thing, because on the one hand, I absolutely need it for the task part of my job, but it certainly gets in the way of the business part of my business. And so finding that balance.
Definitely, definitely, as you say, that I can relate. There's definitely been a few, even now, of different ventures that I've tried over the years or times, and it definitely makes sense. I want to ask, for you, do you feel like there's any unique advantages or disadvantages starting a business, either specifically in Hungary or just abroad in general? Does that make sense?
I think it would be really easy for me to focus on the disadvantages, because it's hard. It's really challenging, to get everything squared away in a country that's not your home country. Um, it's just difficult paperwork wise, legal wise, et cetera, et cetera. And Hungary is particularly challenging because um, of the language barrier. And so, like I said, I'm very grateful I have a built in interpreter, but it would be extremely difficult if I didn't. And he has actually helped quite a few people that we know who are also expats when they have to deal with Hungarian things to get them pointed in the right direction. So, um, I think that's the realistic view is that it's very challenging. Um, the the other side of that though is starting it away from where I normally have been in the past gave me a measure of freedom to be whoever I needed to be in whatever capacity I needed to be. Um, I could totally reinvent myself if I wanted to. I won't I didn't necessarily. I mean, I've sort of been authentic, this is who I am for to the best of my ability for a long time. But it certainly would have given me the opportunity to be literally anything I wanted to be because I'm in a brand new place and people don't know me yet.
Yeah.
Both physically in Budapest, I'm in a brand new place and people don't know me yet, but also in the online space where I work. I'm brand new and people don't know me yet. I can literally be whoever I want to be.
Mm.
Um, and honestly, that was one of the hardest parts of getting started was figuring out who that was. Who do I want to
Yeah.
be? How do I want to show up? Who do I want to work with? You know, I mean, there's all kinds of technical stuff that you have to work through and platforms and payment and all kinds of things. And those were really hard being in a foreign country. Um, but but the hard work was really figuring out who I am and who do I want to work with and what do I want to do. Um, and this gave me the freedom to explore that basically without a lot of outside influence and really figure out what was right for me.
Got you. I like that a lot. It kind of do you feel like with that, learning to build a business and then traveling, just in general, obviously your situation is different, but do you feel like there's sort of an overlap with that? Learning to travel and then learning to build a business?
Some of the lessons have been the same. That
Yeah.
flexibility lesson is a big one, right? When things don't
Yeah.
go the way you were expecting to, or you didn't plan it quite right, either side of that, like, what do you do? Um, the getting to meet incredibly intriguing people and hearing amazing stories. Like that's true in both of those cases, right? I learn amazing things when I travel and I also meet amazing people and I get to hear their stories when I edit the proofread. And so yeah, there's a lot of overlap in sort of the lessons learned and the growth experienced. Even though at first blush they don't necessarily seem similar, right? I mean, editing is really like holding yourself up behind a computer screen And traveling is like, oh my gosh, people exist outside of my Zoom window, you know? So, and I am by nature an introvert. I know
Mm,
that's hard to believe when you
mm,
talk to
yeah.
me, but I
That was
am.
surprising,
I am an
actually. Yeah.
introvert,
Mhm.
and I really do like. I don't have to leave the flat. Like there is nothing that compels me to leave the flat. My husband is the opposite of that. If he has been home for 24 hours, something is wrong. And so, but I really don't feel compelled to leave the flat. And so that's great for an editor. It's not
Mm,
so great for a traveler, right? So those two things then end up balancing themselves in my life, right?
yeah.
My natural tendency to stay in and stay to myself and get a lot of valuable work done and precision work done and whatever, but that isn't who I am. That's only half of who I am. And so the travel part, the leaving the flat, even if it's just going across town to a new bar or a new restaurant or a new art exhibit, it gets me out of the flat and it helps me like remember that I'm social and I like to be connected to people and see new things and learn new things. And so I think those two sort of play off of each other to make me a better rounded person.
Mhm. 100%. Love that. Okay. Last question for this one then.
Mm,
For someone who kind of wants to do what you're doing as far as starting a business,
mhm.
location independent business, I should say,
Right.
but maybe they feel overwhelmed. What do you feel like is the first thing that they should focus on?
For me, honestly, it is acknowledge the overwhelm.
Mm,
Like, feel all of the feelings that come with that, because the more you try
mhm,
and press it down, the stronger it gets. It's just like
mm.
resistance training. So the first thing I recommend to everybody is lean into whatever it is that you're feeling about this experience and push through it. Like, feel all the things and then let them go. Um, I think for me, the overwhelm was definitely real. It still is a lot of days, frankly. Um, but research is your best friend and your worst enemy.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
it really is. I mean, the more you research, sometimes the more you research, the more confused you get and the bigger the overwhelm gets. And other times, the more you research, the clearer your options become, and then you can make an informed decision. Um, I think, you know, the overwhelm is real. The research sometimes makes it worse, sometimes makes it better. The only thing I have found that has consistently moved me forward is action and imperfect
1000%.
action. And I hear a lot of times the metaphor I hear frequently is, this is a dance, right? And dancing involves steps forward and steps backwards. And if you learn to see the steps backwards as part of the dance, it's easier. Or the other framework for that is fail forward, right?
Yeah.
I heard somebody the other day say, you'll never come up against any friction if you're not moving. So if you're experiencing friction, if you're experiencing overwhelm, if you're experiencing fatigue, it's because you're trying to do something. So just keep trying. But that imperfect action is so hard for me, but it's also the only thing that moves the needle. So I think acknowledge the overwhelm and then choose one thing. Like take one step today. I have a to-do list longer than my arm. It's overwhelming, right? But when I brain dump that into 3 action items for today instead of 9 pages of a to-do list, I can get some things done. Um, prioritize, prioritize the things that matter and let the rest of it go.
Yeah, a few things at a time. I like those analogies, but the step back is part of the dance. I like that one. I never heard that one before, but I like it a lot.
Yeah,
Definitely makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add as far as starting a business abroad, living like a Hungarian, anything like that, or are you ready to move on?
I think just one thing that I kind of said it, but maybe just to crystallize it a little bit, and that is find your people. Like whether you're starting a business or whether you're starting in a new country or whatever, but find your people. Um, for me, most of that, frankly, is digital, right? I'm finding my digital village in essence. And not just like the people who go online and complain about the weather. Like I have people like that too, but also like the people who have been where you are and know what you're doing. Um, and I also I'm working on, I shouldn't say have because we're not quite there yet, but like finding the local resources that you need as well. So like digital is great and it's a wealth of resources, whether you're looking at like, Facebook groups or LinkedIn or podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, but like find your people that can help you do what you're trying to do. You can't do it by yourself. It's too much. It's too big. And plus you need people. Like if you're going to run a business, you have to have people who know what you're doing and whatever. But then also like those local resources, right? Like we just figured out how to get a library card. It was so exciting. Now I can go to the library. But like even just like directions to someplace, like people want to help. I think overall people want to help. If you find the right people, at least they want to help. And I really feel like that's the key, whether it's building a business or being an expat or changing careers in the US even or
Yeah.
Australia or Britain or wherever you're from, like, if you're just like, you're not moving, but you gotta move kinda
Mhm.
thing, that's how you do it. You find your people, and it's gonna take some time. Like, I grew up in an instant society, right? We live in an instant society, we want things right now. It takes
Mm.
time and patience and flexibility and
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
You can't be a
Definitely takes.
loner and make this work.
No, absolutely not. It's as they say, like no I in team, obviously. So
Yeah.
definitely,
Yep.
I like that a lot. I like that a
And
lot.
sometimes your team is at the corner coffee shop. You just don't know it yet. Like I've got friends who like they just need a body double. They don't need me to say anything. They just need me to show up in the same room so that they will stay busy on what they're supposed to be focused on, right? And I get work done too then, but I think just, like tuning out the noise that creates the overwhelm and focusing on the voice that you're trying to express.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Let's we'll transition. We're almost actually at the end of
Cool.
the interview now, but for the last bit I just want to ask a few random rapid fire questions and then
Sure.
give you 30 seconds of glory for you to take the floor. So, first rapid question. How did the Andy Griffith theme song end up on your bridal playlist? What's the connection with that?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So we were trying to build a playlist for the wedding, and I was trying to include some of my favorite songs and some of his favorite songs. And the Andy Griffith Show is like his all-time favorite show. It is on 24/7 if I let it be. And I actually grew up not loving it. And
Ah.
so the first time for a myriad of reasons that I won't get into, but he loves it, and so the first time he heard me subconsciously whistling along to the theme song, he was like, "Ah, I've converted you." And so it's become a running joke between us that everything is an Andy reference and all the things, so it had to go on the playlist.
I love that story. I love it. Okay. If you had to give up one forever, cold beer or cappuccinos,
Oh
which one would you give up?
gosh. Oh. Um, cappuccinos.
Fair play. Can't go wrong
I
with a
guess
cold
I'll
beer.
switch to
Doesn't matter.
tea, I don't know.
And then
That was a
last
rock and a hard
question.
place.
I think the right choice was made though. Can't go wrong with a cold beer for sure. Last question now. So obviously again, you grew up in the Midwest, Ohio
Mhm.
area.
Yep.
So and we talked a lot about food. So Midwest comfort food or Hungarian comfort food?
Um, both. Yes. Yes, and. I live in a yes and mentality. I will take both. It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question because we have found ways to create American comfort food here. Um,
Ah.
and also I learned Hungarian comfort food before I even moved here because he always made it. And so, that's why I say yes and both. If I had to choose one or the other, probably Hungarian, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Both are still acceptable too. That's fine too. Awesome. All right. So you did it, Amy. We've come to the end of the
Woo.
interview. Now you have 30 seconds of glory. So share what you have going on or drop some more words of wisdom.
Yeah, I'm always all about the words of wisdom. So, one piece of advice, like I tried to narrow it down, like what's the one piece of advice? And it doesn't really matter whether you're navigating the streets of a foreign city or the chaos in your own inbox. It is don't be afraid of the noise. Just find the voice that you're trying to hear and listen to it and follow it and keep moving. Like imperfect action, one step at a time, just keep moving. Starting a business from scratch and doing it abroad is not just like aesthetic photos and chimney cakes. I mean, I do those things, but that's not really like sometimes the challenges make me want to scream into my pillow in 2 or 4 languages. Um, so the key has been for me, and I think is the key, know why you're doing it. Like, some people are doing this thing to escape from something, some it's just, like, the pure adrenaline of adventure. Sometimes it's to explore culture, like, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. For me, it's that my husband is worth it, right? Um, and but that's not gonna be everybody's why, and some people are gonna disagree with that why, and that's okay. They don't have to agree with me. They have to find their own, and once you have that why, make sure it's strong enough to pull you through the days that are hard or the loneliness that kicks in. Because when your why is solid, every struggle is just one more piece of your mosaic masterpiece. Like, the broken pieces count. The broken pieces can be beautiful too. And sometimes when you mend them back together, they're actually stronger than they were in the first place. That's the advice. The little self promo piece, it you can actually follow my adventures if what you've heard is intriguing or you're just curious to see how quickly I can master the art of falling on my face and getting back up again. Pretty good at that too now. I am on social media in lots of ways. Typically on almost every platform, you can search for Buzzword Inc. Buzzword has one Z because it's a play on my name. So Buzword. And Inc. like what you write with, not like the business you incorporated. So Buzword. That'll get me on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn. Or if you want to be a little bit more fun about it, you can also head over to YouTube and search What the Buzz, also with one Z. And you'll get a whole bunch of stuff, but you're looking for the one because there's several that are similar. You're looking for the one that has the honeycomb. That is the channel that my husband and I have a little fun with, and show people around the city. So if you're interested in Budapest, that's a good place to start. I am always looking for great storytellers. So people who travel have stories to tell, and they write books and they need editors. And I would love to hear from them. But also, people write a blog, people build a website. Everything has written text I look at. So um, I'm excited about connecting with new people all the time. My website is the same, buzzwordinc.com. And you can get all of my details, some really fun pictures, all kinds of stuff there. And there's a way to join my email list and also a way to connect with me if you have a project or you know somebody who does. So
Thanks again to Amy for joining me on the show today and sharing some thoughts and insight. If you'd like to connect with her or reach out about some editing services, you can find her on Facebook, LinkedIn, on her YouTube, or at her website. Links in the description. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, a few things for you first time travelers, whether it's international or even local to where your country is, wherever you are. Amy, of course, mentioned, she's only about a year into to traveling now at this point, and even then, obviously, she's slowed a little bit as she's settled into Budapest, but plans to do some travels with her husband as well. Obviously, everyone has to start somewhere, and I think there's a lot of the same mistakes or learning curve that any new traveler, whether it's long term, if you're doing longer travels at one time, or just consistently doing travels over time, that again you get better at as you go. I don't know if anyone ever really gets 100% expert level, but obviously there's levels to it, so to speak. So I remember when I first started traveling, obviously Amy talked about the overpacking in general. I having flashbacks of this huge bag as well. Maybe, I don't know, 80 liters, whatever. It's, I mean, I'm not the tallest person in the world, but even me standing up, if I have the bag on the ground, it's about at my stomach level. I severely overpacked, way more things than I needed. And even then at that trip, I was doing a lot more walking than most people would. So just imagine hauling that big of a bag around. I mean, it was probably like, I'm going to guess maybe 60 to 70 pounds. Kilos, I'm not even gonna lie, I don't know what kilos would it be in kilos, but you could do the math for there. So way overpacked for, at that time, again, what was supposed to be a 2-month trip initially. It did extend longer, but even with that extension of time, I did not need as much as I carried with me at that time. So be mindful how you pack, for sure. I like to say, maybe whatever you feel like you're going to pack, kind of lay it all out on the ground or wherever you're getting ready, and then for each item or thing that you have, so let's say pair of pants or whatever, like take away half of it. So same with your shirts, all that good stuff. You're not going to need all the things 100% for sure. So be mindful of those things, especially, and regardless of where you end up going, wherever your trip is, or even how long you plan to stay overall, or how long you plan to do your trip. You can kind of go different ways when it comes to toiletries, for example. A lot of times now, whenever I land into a place, I won't travel with any toiletries, maybe, toothpaste or whatever, if it happens to be a longer flight or journey. But a lot of the other things, if you happen to use lotion, things like that, I'll just buy whenever I get to a set country. That way, obviously, I don't have to worry about the extra weight, and it's just something less to worry about. Even then, I remember talking about that journey with the overpacked bag, which of course was my first trip to Paris at that time, or France in general. I had a crap ton of toiletries, and I remember some shampoo, I think it was. But fortunately for me, I arrived in France, in Paris, and it was a little bit rainy, which is fine. It wasn't too bad, but I decided to walk to where I was heading to with said big bag. It's fine then, because I wasn't used to it, and it was a nice walk. But when I ended up where I was staying, opened up my bag, and then I realized, even though I had it in its own bag inside of the main backpack, the shampoo or whatever kind of opened up a little bit, so had a little bit of a soapy situation going on. So even things like that can add to the benefit of buying your toiletries or said things once you actually land and get settled, versus traveling with it and having to carry extra stuff and extra weight. So just another trick that you can use when you plan your trip. Obviously, if you need some essential stuff, obviously I know sometimes things could be hard to find when you're in a certain country, especially if it's somewhere that maybe isn't a bigger city or as well connected or whatever it be. So travel with what you need, of course, or what you like. But a lot of those typical essential things, toothbrush, toothpaste, all that good stuff, obviously you can pick it up once you land at a place and kind of go from there. So and even take advantage, depending on where you plan to or where you plan to stay, as far as like a hotel versus hostel. Obviously, hotels, they give you a little, usually anyway, give you a care package, even some hostels as well. So you can take advantage of that if you like as well. Another thing I'll say, try to take some time to learn a bit about the basic logistics of wherever you're heading to as well. I know a lot of times, especially depending on where you are, you might be used to, as far as cash goes, being able to pay for everything with card, or maybe even vice versa, paying things with cash. And then depending on where you go, most places you would think both options are available, but a lot of times, again, depending on where you go, it might be one or the other. So, and I guess it's not necessarily a huge thing, inconvenience when you end up there and then you realize I can't pay for X thing with cash or card. But sometimes it might turn into something that is a bigger situation in the moment. So whether it's wherever it is that you, whatever place that you book to stay, or just different things like that, be mindful of that. Just take the time, a little bit of extra time to dig in a little bit and see, okay, do I have the cash on hand, or do I need to have a card, or something like that. But again, just be mindful of that. There's been a lot of times, for example, where, and again, it's worked out okay because there's ATM right there, but where I've stayed at a hostel in Thailand, or hung out at my typical hostel in Thailand, and people show up and then they ask, oh, can I pay with card? No, you got to go to the ATM and do that. So again, not a big deal. But there could be other situations where maybe let's say you're staying somewhere that happens to be a little bit more remote, and it might be a little bit more of a hassle to get to an ATM, something like that. Even I, myself, me being in the States, sometimes I've walked into a place where they would only accept a card, where at the time I had a card on me, but I was hoping to pay with cash and didn't necessarily realize that until the moment. So things like that can happen on the road. Just be mindful, dive in the research to make sure that you're prepared for things like that. Same thing with maybe transportation as well, right? So if you can find out those things beforehand, like best ways or potential ways to get around a certain place, figure that out. But that said, obviously sometimes things like that, it isn't, you might not realize until you get there. For me, when I land into an airport, especially if it's somewhere that I don't necessarily know, I think a lot of times people maybe feel rushed. I mean, you might have been doing a long flight and just ready to get to wherever you're heading to. And sometimes that can lend itself, I would say, to error, and not necessarily not being able to get to where you're going, but potentially you can be taken advantage of by taxi drivers if you're not doing an Uber or something like this, for an example. Take the time to, and obviously this depends on where you go, right? But take the time when you arrive to the airport and pick up your things. If it happens to be later in the evening or whatever, just take a moment, sit, and get your thoughts together, right? Do a little research to figure out, okay, how can I get to the endpoint of wherever I'm going to, if you haven't already done this, obviously. Do I take a taxi? Does the airport have a stall where I can sign up for a taxi? Do I do an Uber or Grab or whatever the country has that you're in? Am I able to take the bus? Can I take the train into the city or wherever I'm heading to? Slow down a little bit, obviously, is the point, and do a little research in that moment versus trying to just get to where you're going and rush things potentially, which can cause a situation that may not be the best for you in the moment. But ultimately, overall, especially if it's your first trip, I don't care, doesn't matter where it is, what you're doing, how long you're going for, you're going to have teachable moments, right? So just be mindful of that and accept that. Like it's going to happen, whatever it is. Learn from it and carry on. Now, as far as the other part of Amy's story, just going this unconventional path or different path from what she expected, and obviously you're her husband, but being influenced by someone to travel. A lot of times in different ways, the ability to travel in a way that's transformative anyway, whether it's long-term travel, moving to a new place with or for a significant other, kind of happens often out of nowhere. So I can't speak on that first part per se, but just the idea of it coming out of nowhere, obviously, I just at the time I just wanted to do a trip for a few months, as I mentioned in the interview, and come back and do the typical things you would think, go to school, and then figure things out from there, so on and so forth. But that trip changed things for me, as I mentioned, and it led into all of these things. But that said, even just speaking on my experience, obviously, the idea of others kind of influencing your travels. I ended up, or I only learned about working on cruise ships because a friend from home where I grew up, he had sent me. This was during that first trip, again with the big bag, but he had sent me an article that from this guy who talked about different ways to make money on the road. And from reading that article, I found out about ships, and I learned that it fit well for the experience that I had at that time. And obviously, I took that shot, and then ended up getting that position. So again, to the point, someone influenced that path for me, and I just kind of acted on it and was able to make it work out. But if that person hadn't sent that article, maybe I would have found it at some point, obviously, but who knows? And then again, just with that idea, when I think about where I grew up and the sort of people that I was lucky enough to grow up around, and the high majority of the kids that I went to school with in high school were from international backgrounds, Asian, Hispanic, whatever it be. So I didn't realize at that time, I would say, but as I started to travel more, or at least after a certain point of traveling, I came to realize that, or I would think that that time period at that time in high school and being around a bunch of different people with different ethnic backgrounds and whatnot, subconsciously, at least, I would say played a part into my desire to want to travel in different cultures and whatnot. So again, just another example of other people kind of influencing my desire to travel. So for you out there, whether it's a significant other, romantically speaking, or you have friends or maybe other family members who've traveled themselves, just think about the relationships that you have and how their background maybe can have an influence on you and you're wanting to do any journeys down the line. And then, of course, just if you're able to, being open to different paths. Again, going back to Amy, she had her life planned out as she mentioned, and she met somebody, and he had a different story, and she kind of decided to follow that path instead of what she had planned out for herself before. So again, it doesn't have to be the same situation for yourself, but if there's something where you maybe have an opportunity, and even not even just with travel, but in general, I guess, and you have the opportunity to pursue it, why not? I'll speak quickly about another job opportunity I had at one point back during the pandemic era. I was where I was at the time, just kind of waiting it out, see what happened. But especially with the ships being down as well. But time goes. Ended up getting a job offer in a small town in Illinois. Being there, the opportunity being there, working on a farm as well, but also still working with families and kids, led me to this small community, which I ended up staying around for a year, and I was able to build a little family over there as well with the people in the town. So oddly enough, someone had contacted me just the other day saying, "Oh, we miss you. When are you coming back?" So in a way, that wasn't necessarily a travel situation, obviously, but being able to be in a new city and somewhere, again, like I've been all over the place. This town was a town of maybe 700 people, give or take. So for me, very different, and I guess would fit into a unconventional path, definitely at that time. But it turned out to be a fantastic time, and a lot of great people there, and overall an awesome experience, just obviously being on the farm and working with those families and getting to know people in that community as well. And so with that said, again, when it comes to travel, just look out for those opportunities, whether it's people or new doors that can lead to new perspectives and challenges. With that, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out, backpackersociety20@gmail.com. Thanks again to Amy for joining me today. Thank you for listening, and until next time, be well.